In this video, I'm bringing real members of the Peaky Blinders gang back to life, using authentic police photographs, animated and colorized for the first time. These aren't just mugshots, their faces marked by a brutal world. These were the men who once walked the darkest streets of Birmingham. Gangsters, enforcers and outlaws, forged in the grit and smoke of their city. I've also included real historical figures who appeared in the show, and whose real lives are even more surprising. This is their story, brought back in living colour. Henry Lightfoot started his life of crime stealing racing pigeons in Birmingham, and was later imprisoned for assault. Tragically, he was wounded in World War I and lived out the rest of his life in the slums. Harry Fowles, nicknamed Baby-Faced Harry, was arrested for theft in 1904 at just 19. He also served in World War I and never fully recovered from his injuries. George Hickling was jailed for voter fraud in 1905, a real Peaky Blinder. He had a broken nose, facial scars, and flags tattooed on his back. Samuel Sheldon was just 17 when he was jailed for hurling bricks at police and passers-by. In 1912, he narrowly survived a gangland shooting. A bullet tore through his hat and grazed his skull. Charles Williams was a familiar name in Birmingham's gang scene of the 1890s. He wore a low billycock hat, a sharp, street-tough look that defined the early Peaky Blinders. Billy Kimber, arguably Birmingham's most notorious gangster of the time. He made his name through illegal bookmaking, racecourse extortion, bribery, assault, and armed gang warfare. As leader of the Birmingham Boys, he ran protection rackets from Epsom to Ascot, and waged a brutal turf war with the Sabini gang in London. Charles Bowton, arrested in 1891, was a petty thief from the slums. He lived through the early days of the Peaky Blinders, as petty crime gave way to a more structured underworld. George Cloggy Williams was sentenced to life in 1897 after killing a police constable in a brutal fight. He became one of the first feared names in Birmingham's gang history. At the time, Birmingham police were specially trained to handle the city's growing street violence. Thomas Gilbert, also known as Kevin Mooney, was rumoured to be the gang's leader. He ran extortion rackets, changed names to evade the police, and helped shape the rise of the Peaky Blinders. Edward Derrick, he was arrested at 16 for housebreaking. His record was brutal: theft, assault, attacks on police, and violence at home. Feared on the streets, and even more behind closed doors. Edward grew up in one of Birmingham's many slums, where poverty bred crime, and the cycle was hard to escape. Alfred Solomon, a feared London gangster. He ran illegal bookmaking and gambling rackets across Camden, using violence and intimidation to keep rivals in line. Back then, bookmaking was the heartbeat of the underworld. In Birmingham, no name stood out more than Alfie Buttrell, the Silver King. Ernest Bales, born in 1886, was arrested for theft, one of several crimes that would eventually lead to prison. Charles Lambin, arrested here for breaking into a shop. He was recruited into gang life at a young age. One of many boys shaped by poverty, violence, and the harsh realities of Birmingham's streets. George stood out among the Peaky Blinders, not just for his name, but for his distinctive look. A sharply tilted flat cap and quiff were trademarks of the gang's early style. Charles Coley Jones. He was a feared enforcer in Birmingham's gangs, known for his violent streak and authority. Sir Charles Horton Rafter was the real-life inspiration for Chief Inspector Chester Campbell in Peaky Blinders. Appointed Chief Constable of Birmingham in 1899, Rafter modernised the city's police force, introduced officer training, and expanded manpower. He's widely credited with breaking the back of the real Peaky Blinders. Charles Battle, a petty criminal in the city's industrial sprawl. He wore the knotted silk scarf, or daff, that would soon define gang fashion. Edward Tuckey. He rose to prominence within the Birmingham gangs, He served multiple terms of hard labour and was later sentenced again for his role in a violent ambush. Arthur Morris, born in 1867 in the Welsh town of Pontypridd, was arrested in 1906 for being a rogue and a vagabond. He served 12 months. Charles Darby Sabini was a British-Italian gangster who ruled London's racecourses in the 1920s. He ran protection rackets, controlled betting pitches, and clashed violently with the Birmingham boys. Much of Sabini's empire was run by his brutal lieutenant, George E. Langham. In 1922, he was charged with grievous bodily harm. Henry Tuckey, a former Peaky Blinder, was jailed after the Epsom Road Battle of 1921. The violent clash saw Birmingham gangsters confront London rivals over racecourse control. Leah Jinks was just 18 when she was arrested for assault. A polisher by trade, she was rumoured to be tied to the Peaky Blinders, perhaps as a lover, an informant, or both. David Taylor was just 13 when he was arrested in 1919 for carrying a gun. His name made the headlines, and he was linked to the rising gangs. James Fatty Potter was a labourer turned thief, known for breaking into pubs and warehouses. He was called a Peaky Blinder, though by the 1930s, that label meant almost any crook. John Gallagher, born in 1865, stood 5'6" with a stocky build and a scar across his chest. A known troublemaker, he was arrested for drunken behaviour in 1904. Jessie Eden, featured in the show Peaky Blinders, was also a union organiser in real life. She led a major women's strike in Birmingham in 1931. Industry was Birmingham's heartbeat, clanging steel, choking smoke, and wages barely worth the pain. But away from the factory gates, the cost of progress piled up in the slums, overcrowded, underfed, and forgotten. In streets like these, petty crime was part of daily life. Boys stole and fought, not for glory, but to survive. Police took their mugshots, but behind each one was a life shaped by poverty and hard choices. Nowhere captured that reality like Small Heath, where gangs weren't rare, just woven into daily life. As the gangs grew, so did the response. Police kept watch as the city balanced on the edge of control. A few, like Billy Kimber, left the streets behind, trading grime for power, but the past was never far away. For most, though, the story ended here, behind bars in Birmingham's prison. Not legends, just lies marked and left behind.